One perfect math rock. The marble and the mutilation hobo. It's so good already. D&D night at the friendly local game store, and a new face joins us in a one-shot with some regulars. The newcomer is, well, a neckbeard, straight out of central casting. Heavy set, with wild facial hair, ball cap on backwards. Oh, this is the worst. Wearing a t-shirt with some hipster slogan that doesn't quite cover his gut, but hey, we don't judge. We're all geeks here, and all of us are at least a little bit awkward. It happens. Neckbeard rolls up a rogue, and immediately tries to get a 5-finger discount from a shopkeeper. When the shopkeep inevitably catches him, Neckbeard says, he's gonna kill the shopkeeper, and some commoners milling around for the XP. Already, it's gone so far off the rails. He's reminded that this is a one-shot, and we won't be gaining any levels. Oh, he says. Oh, well, then I'll just kill him for practice. That's not how any of this works. DM, of course, shuts this down in the name of getting on with the one-shot, and the party moves on, with the neckbeard grumbling a bit about player agency. Yeah, but we don't want to stand here and kill a bar full of patrons. We want to complete the one-shot campaign. So weird. Yeah, great start. Once they get to the adventure, Neckbeard turns out to be the worst kind of murder hobo. He jumps to roll initiative at every opportunity, brags constantly about his damage numbers, bickers over loot, grouses when somebody else gets the kill, fudges dice rolls, complains that he's being singled out when the DM insists on rolling dice for him, and only him. He whines that PvP isn't allowed, misreads his character sheet, and the list goes on and on. No, please, really, do go on. I love stuff like this. PvP, I guess it can be cool if everybody agrees to it, but he's just out here to snatch some wigs for absolutely no reason. I mean, I know the reason. It's because he has no control in his actual life. Anyways, 2 hours in, the whole table is sick of Neckbeard's BS. The party enters a small room, suspiciously empty except for a small, perfectly round pearl, sitting on a velvet cushion atop a small pedestal. Oh boy, what do you think our intelligent rogue is going to do? Neckbeard, of course, being the rogue, checks the room for traps. He rolls a natural 20, and the DM reports that there are no traps in the room. Before anybody else can make a move, Neckbeard says, grab the treasure! The DM says there's a sound like a clap of thunder as Neckbeard's character vanishes into thin air. Well, that's one way to solve it, isn't it? The party's wizard steps forward to examine the pearl, carefully and without touching it. One Arcana check later, wizard determines that the pearl is actually a warp marble, an old-school wondrous item which traps the first person who touches it in an extra-dimensional space inside the marble. You know the DM pulled this one out of nowhere. Is that actually in the one-shot? I swear it's not. He just solved the problem in a very interesting way. Creative problem solving is not just for players anymore. DM asks Wizard what he's gonna do to free the Neckbeard, and with a big smile, Wizard replies, absolutely nothing. Oh, it's so good. Neckbeard gets mad and stomps off while the rest of the table is busy laughing. Neckbeard would try his hand at being a DM, but that is a story for another day. Also wanted to say, if you haven't subscribed or liked the video yet, this is your reminder to do so. Let's check out the next part. Real D&D, with the quotes and everything. I said the second part of this story was a story for another day. Well, by popular demand, it seems that day is today. Oh, blessed we are. So after getting laughed out of a one-shot, Neckbeard returned to the friendly local game shop to try his hand at DMing. Bro, if you're incapable of being a player, please don't be a DM. He hangs up a sign-up sheet and he gets 7 players for a new DM. Oh boy. On game night, he arrives fashionably late, greets everyone and starts setting up his notes, DM screen, etc. Somebody asks about session 0. He scoffs and takes out a small wooden sign, like the kind you would see on a C-suite exec's desk. D&D table, it says. Wow, this guy's got all the accoutrement, doesn't he? What are you doing? He places this sign in the center of the table. That's what we're playing, he says. Dungeons and Dragons. That's all you have to know. So no session 0 then? Character creation is brisk. He doesn't care about backstories, and he tells one player to just leave that part blank. To be fair, he does let players make whatever characters they want, aside from confining them to the player handbook. That's good, that's all above board. He snickers when somebody builds a ranger, but he doesn't shut anybody down. Game starts with the player characters at the entrance to a dark castle. A lich is somewhere in the dungeons beneath the castle, and the players have to find and kill him. Why? Someone asks. Because he's a lich, says the Neckbeard. What do you think? Are you presuming that I don't know that I have to go for the phylactery? He just probably hid the phylactery in some, like, super clever place that nobody will look. Ho, ho, ho. Yeah, bro, because it's my first time playing D&D too, okay? So if you guessed that Neckbeard's campaign was just gonna be a meat grinder, well, you're correct. Oh, how correct you are. 2 player characters die in the second combat. Neckbeard's response is to hand the players fresh character sheets and told them to roll up new characters while the party continues. I guess today we're playing some Edge Max Death Grind. Just like that, one of the players asks. Broke level 1s can't afford raised dead. Welcome to Dungeons and Dragons. Bro, ain't you a first-time DM? I don't know if you should be acting all high and mighty. I know everything about this game, yeah, except for how to construct an engaging campaign. Later on, another character trips a trapped chest and gets burned to a crisp. Should've let the rogue check it out first, Neckbeard says smugly. The rogue does check out the next chest and fails his disarm roll, dying to a poisoned needle. Wow, so fun. Characters that I don't dare get attached to at all. I enjoy a good dungeon crawl, but come on, give me some stakes, you know? So, by now, the first 2 that have died have now rejoined the party, their new characters rescued from prison cells within the castle cellar, but the party is now without a rogue, and the Neckbeard just does not let up with the traps. Better be careful, is all he says. He doesn't let up with the combat either. At one point, low on spells, the party asks if they can take a long rest. Neckbeard says they could withdraw back to town to rest and resupply, but they'll have to face a random encounter on the way back. He also rolls random encounters if the party spends too long dilly-dallying in one room or another. Dilly-dallying. He really just doesn't want anybody to roleplay. This campaign is a nightmare already. You started out with way too many players at 7, but I'm pretty sure you keep this up, you're gonna end up with 0. It doesn't even sound fun. For a meat grinder dungeon, it's not terribly unfair, but the Neckbeard is uncompromising and dismissive and just plain rude to his players. 2 players leave before the second session. See, I told you, the culling, leaving the party without a rogue. Again, Neckbeard says they can either pick up an NPC hireling who will handle traps for a fee and do nothing in combat, or someone else can re-roll as a rogue, coming in one experience level lower than their current character. Some player characters had leveled up between sessions if they hadn't died. That leaves just the 3 that hadn't died, right? Somebody asks if the difficulty will be adjusted for a smaller party. That's not how it works, Neckbeard says. Besides, you guys already have it easy. Somebody else says that the game doesn't feel easy. It would if you knew how to play. Oh, it's so ridiculous. It pains me deep down. That's Neckbeard's default response to any criticism. You should just play better. Your character's useless? You shouldn't have picked a ranger then. Everyone knows they suck. You keep getting clobbered by skeletons. Should have invested in better armor. Your spells keep getting resisted. Big different spells. The monsters are clearly out of your party's league. Sneak through or turn back. But they have the key that we need. Figure something out. What was your intended plan for this encounter? Oh, you didn't have one. I mean, I'm all for winging it, you know, but at least make it doable. At least make it fun. The last straw comes when the party finds a portrait gallery. They examine the paintings and do history checks, trying to learn something about the castle's history. Neckbeard humors them for a while, and then rolls dice for another random encounter. Oh, bad luck, he says. 3 beholders float into the room. Not being fools, the entire party hauls ass in the other direction, straight into a dead end. Oh my god. He's just a sadist, that's all he is. That wasn't a dead end until the party ran into it. The beholders catch up, and it turns into a total party kill. You shouldn't run down unexplored corridors, is all the Neckbeard has to say. That's it, I'm done. Let's all say it together. No D&D is better than bad D&D. Neckbeard tells the players to roll up new characters, and they'll start back in town. But the players have had enough. They complain that last fight was blatantly unfair. Neckbeard shrugs. It's a random encounter. Random. If you don't like them, don't dawdle. Dawdle? Dilly-dally? How old is this Neckbeard? I got some questions. They complain that too many of the fights are far too hard. Make better characters then. They complain that the dungeon is nothing but wall-to-wall combat and traps. That's a dungeon for you. But it's not fun, one player says. And this sets Neckbeard off. He slams his hand on the table and goes into a huge rant, grousing that this is Dungeons and Dragons, not some kids playing let's make believe on the playground. Players shouldn't expect to be coddled. I don't run hand-holding soap opera games, and so on and so forth. He's not really screaming, but he is loud enough that the other tables at the shop are taking notice. He ends the rant by picking up the sign that he had on the table and telling the players, this is what we're playing, Dungeons and Dragons. It's not for obscene epithets who write 100-page backstories and binge Critical Role. You play to win or you expect to lose. At this table, we play real D&D. And he slams the sign down to punctuate this. Oh, God. After a pause, one of the players raises his hands. Hey, yeah, can we go play fake D&D instead? Neckbeard's a bit thrown by this. Before he can even respond, another player chimes in that she too would like to play fake D&D. Neckbeard says, hey, that's not how it works. But the players hold an informal vote, and they are unanimously in favor of playing fake D&D. Neckbeard glowers, tells everybody he'll see him next week, gathers his stuff up, and leaves. Neckbeard shows up the next week to find that the group arrived a whole hour early. They brought a new DM, and they started without him. Oof. In the center of the table is a piece of paper folded into a tent shape to make an awkward little sign with red letters on it reading, "Fake D&D table." One player notices Neckbeard and waves. Neckbeard goes red-faced with anger, turns on his heel, and stomps out of the store. Oh, God. What a disaster, dude. What I want to know is how do the players keep getting pigeonholed into this dungeon, right? If you all died and end up in town, just be like, I'm going to go kill boars in the forest, try and get some experience. Maybe then we could tackle the dungeon. And then instead of killing boars in the forest, we just sit down, light up a campfire, do some fishing, get some quality role playing. I love me some fake D&D. And I want to revel in this feeling for just a moment. So let's go on down to the comment section and see what they have to say. I waited eagerly to see this part of the story, and it did not disappoint. The little paper saying fake D&D table made it. Those are some good players right there. More power to them. Neckbeard got absolutely obliterated. Also, the unfathomable arrogance of, "I'll see you next week," after his players expressed a universal dislike of his game. I think he could have brought it back around, you know? He could have been like, wow, you guys didn't like that? Maybe I'll try something different. But no, he's just so convinced that he is right and everybody else is wrong. We do see that a lot, actually. Anyways, Shady Shade says, besides, you guys have it easy anyway. Yeah, I mean, I haven't even used a level 40 Dracolich with an initiative of wow, why even bother rolling? Whose first combat action is to cast Heighten, Maximize, Still Silent, Create Antimatter 5 times in one turn. You bunch of babies. Man needs to take a trip to the Amazon to apologize personally to the trees for wasting the oxygen that they worked so hard to produce. Oh, God. The sickest birds in this subreddit. That's an r/rare insult if I ever heard one. Yeah, and he needs to apologize for every single atom that makes up his body for wasting their time with his life. Yeah, we go further with it. This man is depriving a village somewhere of their idiot. And see, we went too far. You didn't have to go there, Wombat Racer. Sorry to let you know. I had to be the one. Huxley was right, says, that's what I don't get about DMs that like to beat the players. Like, what's the challenge? It's easy to raise all your DCs to a point where you know they'll struggle to meet and put overpowered, overcrowded monsters in dungeons that outmatch the party. What's hard is finding a sweet spot where the party struggles, but manages to meet the rolls most of the time, and has to think about resting and hit die without, you know, outright TPKing them. See, those are the dungeon masters that I really respect. Give some time for role-playing, tweak the combat just right, but it does take a lot of practice. Probably why I'm so hesitant to get into DMing myself. Peregrine C says, look, I love a mega dungeon meat grinder as much as the next guy, but I make damn sure that that is what everyone's on board with. Kudos for the players for finding a game that they like. Although I'm sure Neckbeard did take that extremely personally. Recluse Reborn replies, the problem is there's well-designed meat grinder dungeons and then there's haphazardly thrown together crap that is just oppressively deadly for no good reason. I used to play with a DM that ran the latter. Yeah, and that's about the time that you ghost the group. Well, it seems to me like there's another post from this same dude, not related to these two. But I figure I'd throw a third one in here, keep the video a little bit more beefier, you know? People showed up for the meat. Can't disappoint the people. All right, so let's move on into the next one. A tidal wave of D20s. Clattering across the table like aggressive stone tumbleweeds. And this is one day ago. You could tell the title drew me in. You know, this dude's a good writer. I'm like, oh, evocative. So it's game night again at the friendly local game shop. And while we try not to judge, you could tell right from the get-go that Newbie was going to be a problem. He saunters in wearing all black and a stainless steel skull ring, slouches in his chair like he's the hottest crap that ever crapped, makes small talk to the rest of the players, taking effort to point out that his favorite media properties are way cooler than theirs. He comes prepared with a ready-built character, a stock standard mysterious rogue with a mysterious backstory. Bends DM's ear before game about wanting a realistic campaign. Veteran players sigh internally. I mean, you want to tell him no, but you're like, convince yourself, maybe it's gonna be okay. And it's just never okay. So we start off in a tavern. Cliche, but it works. DM describes a packed tavern on a cold winter night, with the snow gently falling. Inside, a jovial scene that includes a roaring fire, a cheerful half-orc bartender, and a human barmaid. For once, the newbie with the edgy rogue is not sitting in the corner. He's instead talking with the barmaid, which is possibly even worse. Hey, you're cute, he says. She blushes and thanks him. How much? He asks. She quotes him prices for a drink and a meal. No, said Newbie. No, said ReddX. I mean, how much to get you to come to my bedroom for tonight? DM sighs, quite externally this time. She scoffs at you and walks away towards another table. Newbie sneers at the DM. I catch her by the arm and tell her it's no use playing, and I know how to make it good for her, if that's what she's worried about. Dude, what the hell is this? I'm so immediately uncomfortable. Can we not end it right here and now? Troll reaches in, grabs Newbie and eats him, and then leaves to go back to the mountains. Dud. DM says the barmaid shakes out of Newbie's grip and continues walking away. Newbie gets pissed and starts yelling at the DM that he should at least get to roll persuasion. And DM's playing the barmaid all wrong. DM tells him that the barmaid is not a lady of the night, to which Newbie replies, of course she is. That's what wenches do. Well, no, wenches are servants, and most people don't take to doing such things to their servants. See, it creates familiarity. But even beyond that, she's not a wench. She's a barmaid. Why do I need to explain these things? And then even if you get your persuasion roll and all that stuff, like, do we have to play it out? We're just gonna fade to black, right? I just already hate it. At this point, another player cuts in to the effect that actually, most taverns in the Middle Ages were family-owned businesses, meaning that the waitstaff was usually the owner's relatives. Taking the cue, DM says that the bartender taps Newbie's rogue on the shoulder and asks why he's getting all handsy with his daughter. Cue screaming Newbie, arguing with the rest of the table that DM's just pulling that stuff out of his butt, cause how could a half-orc father a human child? The argument goes on for 10 minutes. At one point, a player says, well, in real life, there are mixed-race people with lighter skin. More shockingly, there are also mixed-race people with darker skin, which was hilarious, I think. Maybe you had to be there. You definitely had to be there, but I appreciate you throwing it in. That's adding to the awkward, nerdy immersion. That's the vibe I love most. Finally, Newbie's had enough and says, you know what? Screw this. I'm gonna stab that bartender dead, and then take the wench and drag her off behind the bar to get some. Oh, God. It's like you see the train coming, you know, but you just can't make it stop. At this point, the argument stops. The table is stunned. DM starts to ask if he's sure, but is interrupted by Newbie rolling to hit and then for damage. Okay. DM leans back tiredly After a moment, he asks the player to his left to borrow his d20s. The player hands DM one of his dice, and DM asks if he can borrow another. DM goes around the table, borrowing every player's d20s. Some have extras for spares or luck or to speed up rolls with advantage. Then he goes up to the store counter and buys more d20s. Winding up with about 2 dozen 20-siders all in all. Nobody knows what he's up to. Finally, he sits back down behind his screen and speaks.
Okay, your attack hits, and your dagger sinks into the bartender's belly. He stumbles backwards, clutching his side. The barmaid screams, which gets the attention of the other patrons. For a second, there's complete silence, and then voices.
Holy God, he stabbed old Otto. Oh my God, he's gonna kill him. What if the bartender dies? That means no beer? No beer!
No beer!
All eyes turn to you as the cry goes up,
Get him!
rolling initiative for the entire bar. DM rolls, and it is just a tidal wave of d20s of all different sizes and materials clattering across the table like aggressive stone tumbleweeds, ricocheting off each other, knocking over minis, and, of course, making an ungodly racket. DM asks the other players what they do. They all opt to sit at their tables, sipping their drinks, as Newbie's rogue is dogpiled by over 20 half-drunk commoners. He does try to fight back, of course, but he's quickly grappled to the ground and beaten unconscious by nearly 50 fists doing 1d4 damage each, plus one old man with his walking stick that dealt 1d6. The mob steals all of the rogue's gear, including his clothes, drags his unconscious body outside, and hangs him from a tree by his ankles, upside down, and naked for good measure. Oh, and I should remind you, this is on a cold winter's night with the snow gently falling. They also used hot pitch to write, "Look at this," on his rear end, and Newbie is seething. The rest of the players are laughing their asses off, however. It is so good. It's almost as good as the warp marble. Meanwhile, the party gives the bartender medical attention, getting some free drinks for their trouble, of course. Later on, after picking up the quest hook, they do take pity on the sulking Newbie and cut his rogue down on the logic that, he might be useful if there are traps. Newbie goes with them on the adventure, but he's clearly deflated. He leaves the game halfway through, making some excuse about, other things to do. He never returns to the store, and nothing of value was lost that day as far as I'm concerned. You really probably shouldn't be solving out-of-game problems with in-game solutions. That's one thing that I do know. This should have been like full stop. You're not doing that. If you insist on doing that, continuing to behave that way, then I'm gonna ask you to leave my table. And there is some contention in the comments about that, so let's cover that a little bit. We got King's Daughter that says this is not a horror story. This is a horror story that was prevented by a smart DM and is now a wonderful story of an awful person and player getting their comeuppance. Thank you for this wonderful tale, and I hope you got your brilliant DM a drink after this session. Rush Raptor kind of voicing what I said. I semi-disagree. A smart DM would have simply said, no, we're not doing that. Everyone let the rogue do what he wanted, and then the DM made a show about the consequences. Don't do that. Simply axe any type of maltreatment from even being attempted. King's Daughter retorts, well, I think that is often a good way to handle it. I think doing it this way taught the kid a much better lesson. If the DM refused, he'd likely try again at another person's table or would have remained belligerent the remainder of the session. By allowing him enough rope to hang himself, the DM humiliated him and hopefully taught him a lesson that he'd never forget. And then the argument devolves into semantics, as it always does after 3 replies, but King's Daughter kinda talking me around a little bit, you know? Maybe next time have a sidebar with the players and see what they want to do about a situation like this. Like, are we down to have some fun with this dude, or do you want him removed from the table immediately, right? As always, in almost every RPG, almost every fast of life for that matter, it is exceedingly important to have good communication, open communication. With that said, I'd like to openly communicate that I'd like you to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Check out them links in the description. There's so much stuff. Thank you, as always, to my Patreon and YouTube channel members. And as always, I would like to remind you that you are loved, you are worthy, you definitely deserve it, and I shall see you again tomorrow. So until then, my friends, bye-bye.